How did our ancestors survive when smarter organisms went extinct? In our last episode, you explored the Burgess Shale, a fossil site preserving exceptional soft tissue detail, revealing creatures like Opabinia and Hallucigenia that showcase the Cambrians' wild experimentation with body plans. Among these bizarre organisms was Pikaia, a simple, unimpressive creature that most observers would overlook. Yet Pikaia represents the chordate lineage, our direct ancestors. This episode focuses on early chordates, exploring what made their body plan special, how they survived when more sophisticated organisms went extinct, and how this humble beginning eventually produced fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, mammals, and humans. In the Cambrian seas, chordates were nobody, while Anomalocaris ruled as apex predator and trilobites carpeted the seafloor in thousands of species. Early chordates like Pikaia were unremarkable worm-like creatures that spent most of their time trying not to be eaten. They had no armor, no claws, no crushing jaws. In an ocean filling with predators wearing hardened exoskeletons and wielding compound eyes, chordates brought a flexible rod of tissue to a knife fight. They should have been evolutionary dead ends, footnotes in the story of life's diversification. Yet somehow, impossibly, you're here reading this. Every vertebrate on Earth, every fish, frog, bird, and mammal descends from these Cambrian losers. The question isn't why chordates survived. It's why everything that seemed superior didn't. The defining feature of chordates seemed almost deliberately useless. The notochord, a stiff rod of tissue running the length of the body, provided support without being hard. It wasn't armor like the trilobites wore. It couldn't crush prey like the appendages of arthropods. It just sat there, a flexible internal skeleton that did nothing to protect you from being eaten or help you eat others. Compared to the innovation happening elsewhere in the Cambrian, the notochord looked like a consolation prize. While other phyla were evolving complex eyes, segmented armor, and sophisticated mouthparts, chordates had a gristly rod and not much else. It was the evolutionary equivalent of bringing a pool noodle to medieval combat. Yet that seeming uselessness masked something profound. The notochord allowed muscle segments to work against a firm structure, creating efficient undulating movement. More importantly, it was internal. Every other successful group in the Cambrian, arthropods, mollusks, brachiopods, built their skeletons on the outside. This seemed obviously superior. External armor protected you from predators while providing rigid attachment points for muscles. The notochord did neither particularly well. It offered no protection and limited structural support. In the Cambrian arms race of increasingly heavy armor and powerful weapons, chordates looked hopelessly outmatched. The smart money was on arthropods. They had already won. Arthropods dominated the Cambrian in every measurable way. Their hard exoskeletons provided defense and structure. Their compound eyes could detect movement and form images. Their segmented bodies with specialized appendages could swim, crawl, dig, and manipulate objects. They diversified into thousands of species occupying every available niche. Trilobites alone evolved into predators, scavengers, filter feeders, and burrowers. Some grew spines, others developed elaborate head shields. The fossil record from this period is overwhelmingly arthropods. They were the pinnacle of Cambrian innovation, the obvious victors in the explosion of new body plans. Chordates, by comparison, barely register in Burgess Shale deposits. They were background characters in a story dominated by armored giants. But external skeletons came with a fatal constraint. To grow, arthropods must molt. They must shed their entire exoskeleton, grow a new, larger one, and wait for it to harden. During this process, they're completely vulnerable, unable to defend themselves or hunt effectively. Larger arthropods need longer to harden their new armor, limiting their maximum size. This is why land arthropods remain relatively small today. The largest coconut crabs spend their molting period hidden in burrows. In water, buoyancy helps, but the constraint remains. Arthropods hit a size ceiling determined by how long they could survive unarmored. Meanwhile, that useless notochord had no such limitation. It grew continuously with the animal, never requiring vulnerable periods. This difference seemed trivial in the Cambrian. It wouldn't stay trivial. Once fish had jaws and internal skeletons, the explosion was rapid. Armored placoderms grew to massive sizes, some reaching 30 feet long. Sharks evolved, with skeletons of flexible cartilage allowing for speed and maneuverability. Bony fish diversified into thousands of species, filling every aquatic niche imaginable. Then some of those bony fish evolved limbs and crawled onto land, becoming tetrapods. Tetrapods diversified into amphibians, then reptiles. Then an explosion of reptilian forms, including dinosaurs and eventually birds. A synapsid lineage, reptile-like creatures that weren't quite reptiles, evolved fur and sophisticated temperature regulation, becoming mammals. Each transition took millions of years, but the trajectory was clear. The flexible internal skeleton enabled everything. That useless notochord was the foundation of all vertebrate success. This creates a disturbing thought experiment. Rewind the tape of life to the Cambrian. Change one variable. A storm kills the small population of Pikaia before it reproduces. Just one local extinction of one unremarkable species. No vertebrates ever evolve, fish never develop. Nothing crawls onto land with a backbone. Dinosaurs never exist, mammals never exist. You never exist. Every vertebrate on Earth today traces back to that one fragile lineage that almost didn't matter. Stephen Jay Gould emphasized this in Wonderful Life. Contingency means small changes create massive downstream effects. The history of life isn't a ladder toward increasing complexity and consciousness. It's a sprawling bush where most branches end, and the ones that continue do so partly through luck. We tell the story backward, making it seem inevitable. It wasn't. Look at your hand. The bones in your fingers, your wrist, your arm, they're modified fish fins. The skull protecting your brain developed from cartilaginous elements that once supported gills. Your jaw evolved from structures that held gill arches in place. Your inner ear bones were once part of a fish's jaw hinge. Every part of your skeleton traces directly back through that chain. Mammal, synapsid, reptile, amphibian, tetrapod, lobe-finned fish, jawed fish, early vertebrate, Pikaia. The blueprint hasn't changed, just been modified. You are wearing a 508 million-year-old body plan, updated but not replaced. The Cambrian is not ancient history, it's your current anatomy. Those V-shaped muscle segments in Pikaia, you still have them. They're the segmented muscles along your spine. But here's the uncomfortable part. Chordates survived the Cambrian extinctions not because they were superior, but because their specific features happened to be useful when conditions changed unpredictably. They were flexible generalists in a time when specialization became a liability. Today we are not flexible generalists. Humans are extraordinarily specialized. For specific temperature ranges, specific food sources, specific atmospheric composition, we require vast infrastructure to survive in most places we inhabit. We've become dependent on stable climate, predictable growing seasons, and complex supply chains. We've built our armor on the outside, so to speak. We are far more like the dominant Cambrian arthropods, highly adapted to current conditions than like Pikaia. And we're changing those conditions faster than any Cambrian catastrophe did. The species that were too successful, too specialized, too invested in the status quo, they're the ones the fossil record shows disappearing first. Evolution didn't stop with vertebrate dominance, but the rules established in the Cambrian still apply. Flexibility matters more than dominance when conditions shift. Diversity provides insurance against unpredictable change. Specialization is powerful until it isn't. And extinction doesn't care about complexity or consciousness. It only cares about fit with current conditions. Chordates got lucky once. The characteristics that made them seem like losers became assets when everything changed. We've inherited their body plan, but not necessarily their luck. Whether our species survives the changes we're creating depends on the same principles that determined which Cambrian creatures made it through. And right now we look more like trilobites, dominant, specialized, headed toward conditions we're not adapted for, than like Pikaia. The difference is we can see it coming. When paleontologists finally examined Pikaia in detail, they found a creature of elegant simplicity. It was about 2 inches long, with a notochord running the full length of its body and V-shaped muscle segments, myomeres, stacked along each side. A slight thickening at the front suggested a simple head with basic sensory organs. A thin dorsal fin stabilized its swimming. No armor, no claws, no complex eyes, just the essential machinery for undulating movement. It looked less advanced than many of its Cambrian neighbors. The sophistication was hidden in the efficiency. Those V-shaped muscle segments contracted in waves, flexing the body against the notochord's resistance. The motion was fluid, energy efficient, capable of sudden bursts of speed without the jerky movements of segmented appendages. This is how Pikaia lived, by fleeing. It wasn't a hunter or a bottom feeder. It swam in the water column, probably feeding on smaller organisms or organic particles, and its primary survival strategy was not being where predators were. When Anomalocaris approached, Pikaia could accelerate quickly, change direction mid-movement, and sustain flight longer than many armored creatures whose heavy shells slowed them down. It was the prey animal's strategy. Don't win fights, avoid them. In an ecosystem increasingly dominated by predators with harder shells and sharper weapons, this seemed like postponing the inevitable. Surely something would evolve to catch these fleeing chordates. Surely the arms race would leave them behind. Except the arms race itself was about to hit a wall. The Cambrian ended with a series of extinction pulses. Multiple events over several million years reduced marine diversity significantly. The causes remain debated. Oxygen fluctuations, climate change, or simply the destabilization of newly complex ecosystems. What's clear is that heavily armored, highly specialized creatures suffered disproportionately. They had invested everything in specific adaptations to specific conditions. When those conditions changed, their elaborate armor and specialized feeding structures became liabilities. They couldn't adapt quickly enough. Meanwhile, simple generalists, creatures that could eat various things, tolerate different conditions, and move efficiently, had better odds. Pikaia's flexibility, the feature that made it seem inferior, became its salvation, not because flexibility was superior in general, but because the specific catastrophe favored it. This is contingency in action. The real secret of chordate success was discovered in the late 20th century. Hox genes. These are genetic switches that control body plan development, determining where limbs grow, how segments differentiate, and what structures form where. All animals share versions of Hox genes, but they're arranged differently. Arthropods have theirs organized in a way that makes their segmented, armored body plan very stable, but difficult to modify fundamentally. Chordates have theirs arranged more modularly. This meant that mutations could alter one body region without necessarily disrupting everything else. A change to fin structure didn't have to affect the entire exoskeleton. The Notochord's simplicity was actually developmental flexibility. While arthropods were locked into variations on a theme, chordates could experiment more radically. This wouldn't matter for millions of years, then it mattered enormously. The transformation from notochord to backbone happened gradually over tens of millions of years after the Cambrian. Small cartilaginous elements began forming around the notochord, providing additional support without requiring complete shedding. These elements, protovertebrae, could grow continuously with the animal. They could become more numerous, more specialized, more elaborate without the molt constraint. Eventually, in fish lineages, these structures formed a complete vertebral column. Armor on the inside, protecting the nerve cord while providing attachment points for increasingly powerful muscles. This was the innovation that changed everything. Internal skeletons could grow larger than external ones. They could support more weight. They enabled the evolution of jaws, which transformed chordates from fleeing prey to effective predators. Within a few million years of evolving vertebrae, fish began dominating marine environments. The underdogs became apex predators. Your existence required an unbroken chain of survival stretching back 508 million years. Every ancestor of yours successfully reproduced before dying. Not one link broke. This is true for every human, every mammal, every vertebrate alive today. We are all Cambrian survivors, wearing modified versions of the same basic body plan. But survival is not guaranteed by past success. The Cambrian taught us that. Dominant groups went extinct. Marginal groups inherited the earth. Success and vulnerability are not opposites. Often they're the same thing depending on what happens next. You are the result of the Cambrian explosion's gamble on flexible internal skeletons. That gamble paid off spectacularly. But the game isn't over, and the conditions that made flexibility advantageous are changing again. The question isn't whether life will survive. Life is astonishingly resilient. The question is whether the particular forms we care about, including our own, will be among the survivors when the next great filter passes through. The Cambrian chordates were nobody, and they inherited everything. That's not a comforting story. It's a warning about how quickly dominance can reverse. Remember that when considering what we're doing to the planet that so far has kept our lineage alive for 500 million years. Early chordates remind us that evolutionary success isn't always obvious. The humble, seemingly unremarkable organisms sometimes carry potential that only reveals itself across vast timescales. In our next episode, we'll explore Cambrian ecosystems as integrated communities, how predators, prey, filter feeders, and scavengers formed complex food webs, how these ecosystems functioned, and what they can teach us about modern ecological principles. From individual organisms to communities, the next level of understanding awaits. This is HistoPrimordia, where history comes alive. Thanks for watching. Subscribe now and join us for the next episode story.